Gustave is a very special character, and the only one that starts with a locked skill tree to avoid spoilers. And because I don't want to spoil anything either, I will only cover his abilities before you unlock his full skill tree, which means this is going to be shorter and a bit different, as it focuses more on the earlier portions of the game. Once you did the thing, make sure to check back. I'll have the follow-up ready for you, but until then, here's the spoiler-free Gustave skill tier list. Starting off with his Overcharge. This is a special ability because it's basically also his character mechanic. When you hit with melee attacks or skills, you generate charges that buff this ability's damage. So this is your big payoff skill, and in turn, you don't have a global mechanic that can boost your damage otherwise. A unique concept, but if your whole mechanic is tied to this one skill, it better be good. So as you can see in the modded tooltip, the base damage is 150% of a base attack, but it then gets boosted by 20% per charge. So with the maximum of 10 charges, that would triple its damage, and when using it at maximum charges, you also get an additional 25% damage increase. If you also account for the perfect input bonus of 40% due to having 2 quicktime inputs, you can get up to 785.5% base attack damage, so almost as much as doing 8 base attacks, which is pretty good for an ability that you have since the very beginning of the game. This will create the highest numbers you'll see early on, and almost make you feel bad for hitting Mayel with it for challenging you to a friendly duel. That being said, this number will eventually fall off compared to other characters, who not only start unlocking abilities that have higher base numbers, but also have mechanics that allow them to multiply their damage even further. Mayel's starting ability per se, for example, when used in Virtuo's stance, will already outdamage a fully capacity Overcharge simply because her stance can triple any damage she deals. Early game, Gustave doesn't have a mechanic like that, and until you unlock the rest of his skill tree, this will be your highest damaging ability. It's also his cheapest break ability, and since it doesn't need you to be charged to actually break, it is reliable. Anyway, I think I have talked enough about this one. It's just a tricky skill to rate because this is also his whole mechanic until, you know. So I'll put it into A tier. It's his key ability. It will deal the highest damage early on, but it has to be charged and falls off compared to other characters as they start unlocking more skills and utilizing their more impactful mechanics. And then his other starting skill, Lumiere Assault, which for 3 AP deals pretty low damage, barely more than a base attack, but it generates a lot of charges for his Overcharge ability. Every skill hit generates 1 charge by default, and this skill makes critical hits generate an additional charge. Given how it hits 5 times, it can generate 5 to 10 charges depending on your critical hit rate. Meaning you could ready his payoff skill with a single Lumiere Assault if you get enough crit chance on Gustave, which isn't the easiest thing to do early on, but you also don't have to get to 10 charges every time. Parries and dodges can also generate a charge each, so if you avoid some attacks before your next turn, you can cap it out that way, and even if you don't, Overcharge is perfectly fine to use at like 8 or 9 charges. It doesn't have to be maxed out every time, you still get decent value without the max charge bonus. Outside of charge generation, it does get outclassed by base attacks. You can find some base attack enhancing pictos early that increase their damage by 50%, let them apply powerful, or increase AP generated. You can also buff your free aimed shots by 50% damage and give them a chance to apply burn or mark, which will most likely add more damage than Lumiere Assault itself. When you have some of these pictos and consider how you could use 4 to 5 free aimed shots followed by a base attack for the cost of Lumiere Assault, you'll see how you can get more immediate value by just using basic tools instead. I'll say B tier for Lumiere Assault. While it doesn't deal good damage, its core function is to enable his payoff ability, which it does pretty well throughout a good portion of the game. Next up we have Marking Shot, a cheap low damage skill that applies mark. Single hit means it only generates 1 charge, but the benefit is that those who come after get to deal 50% more damage with the next hit, which can in some instances more than make up for Gustave not dealing much damage himself that turn. And given how other characters start outscaling him with their more impactful mechanics until he unlocks the rest of his skill tree, Marking Shot remains a good, cheap way to contribute to a fight. Mayel's per se, for example, can deal ridiculous damage early game and has the property of dealing double damage to marked targets on top of the 50% mark damage bonus. and she can further triple it in Virtuous Stance, making you hit the damage cap pretty early. You could also set up Mark for Gustave's own Overcharge, which is a single massive hit for perfect Mark synergy. Marking Shot is not a high impact ability by itself, but it can in many cases lead to more damage than using any other available option if you play around it, which is why I will also put it into B tier. And then we have Powerful, which for 3 AP buffs all allies with Powerful for 3 turns and gives 2 charges as long as you don't mess up the quicktime event. Powerful is a very powerful buff as it increases damage dealt by 25%, and applying that buff to everyone for 3 whole turns is kind of a no-brainer for every fight that you expect to last at least 3 turns. Gustave being the one to spend his turn on that buff is actually optimal as he starts to fall off, as mentioned before you get his upgrade. And compared to Marking Shot, which can be quite decent already, Powerful is kinda like applying a mark at half effectiveness that doesn't get removed for 3 whole turns. Nothing to underestimate, even though it may appear boring. I'll say A tier. It's a good way to have our boys stay relevant until the very end, and the charges generated make a nice bonus to slightly accelerate his overcharge. Next up, Recovery, which for 3 AP heals 50% and dispels status effects. Typically, I don't rate single target healing effects that highly, because as you progress the game, your healing and reviving tints become more powerful and abundant, you unlock multiple other ways to heal without necessarily taking up your turn, you unlock pictos that reward you for disabling heals, and you'll find more opportunities for using shields as a form of defense over health. But since this is an early game tier list, the above reasons don't apply just yet. When you unlock Recovery, you don't have that many sources of healing available, and a 50% heal for 3 AP is actually pretty efficient, especially on Gustave, who doesn't have the best filler abilities at that point in the game. And Recovery actually adds 2 charges, which isn't that much compared to, say, Lumiere Assault, but it enables the game plan of stalling until you can overcharge. Since overcharge will be the bulk of your damage, just staying alive while learning the enemy's patterns, generating some charges from dodges, parries, and recovery itself can be a pretty effective strategy should you struggle with specific encounters. That being said, the value of the skill will vary greatly from player to player. Oftentimes, other healing sources will suffice, but I don't think Gustave has enough good abilities for me to say that dedicating a skill slot for a healing skill is not worth it. I think it does deserve a spot on your skill bar, and you won't regret it when you finally do run into a more difficult battle, so I'll say high B tier. And then we have From Fire, another source of healing while dealing damage. From Fire for 4 AP hits 3 times, meaning it generates 3 charges, hits for double base attack damage in total with perfect inputs, and heals Gustave for 20% against burning targets. And it's 20% total, not per hit or anything like that. Now, despite the condition being pretty easy to fulfill, given how both Luni and Mayel have good starting abilities that apply burn, and burn is pretty nice, especially early game, it is still conditional, and when things get chaotic, you may not always get the benefit from the heal, and I don't think the skill would be all that good even if the heal wasn't conditional. From Fire does many things, but it doesn't do anything particularly well. It heals much less than Recovery, it generates far fewer charges compared to Lumiere Assault, the damage is okay, but the thing is it costs 4 AP, and there is a healing base attack picto that lets you heal for 15% for just using a base attack. There's also the augmented attack picto that increases base attack damage to 150%, which means you can hit almost as hard and heal almost as much unconditionally by just using a base attack instead of From Fire, and instead of spending 4 AP, you are actually generating 1 or even 2 AP if you have the energizing attack picto, and there are even more base attack enhancing pictos. And I do think all these pictos are best used on Gustave because his skills can be underwhelming when it comes to damage. The base attack would generate 2 less charges, but I don't think that's worth the 5 to 6 AP difference for using From Fire over a base attack. So I'll say C tier. If you don't have the base attack pictos on Gustave, From Fire is a fine compromise between damage, charge generation and healing. But in general, I think you'll do more damage if you generate charges with Lumiere Assault to get off more overcharges. You'll heal more with Recovery, and you can use enhanced base attacks when looking for a compromise that saves a ton of AP, which at worst can be turned into extra damage via free aim shots, and at best can be saved for the next abilities once you unlock them. Like Strike Storm, his most expensive ability, Lumiere Assault's bigger brother basically. While costly, it deals 6 hits of 70%, but because this skill also has multiple quicktime event inputs, and you can get a 40% bonus instead of the typical 20% for single quicktime event inputs, Strike Storm will end up dealing almost 600% total damage, which isn't too far from a fully charged Overcharge. This one, however, doesn't consume any charges, it actually generates charges, and being a 6-hit move, you'll get 6 charges guaranteed, and any critical will yield an additional 2, meaning you can go from 0 to 10 in a single Strike Storm as long as at least 2 out of 6 are critical hits, which is very likely even with a little investment. If you have the AP to spare, this skill is very much worth it and allows you to have high damage turns back to back. I will say S tier, even though expensive, it's always worth it. It just deals so much more damage compared to his other generic skills. It's the only skill that can even compete with Overcharge, while also generating the most charges rather than consuming them. And last, but definitely not least, we have Shatter. For 5 AP, it deals more than double base attack damage to all enemies, can break, and when successfully breaking, it fully charges his Overcharge. This is absolutely amazing. It's his only area of effect skill, which automatically makes it important. It's the first available AoE breaking ability, which are not common at all, and it massively rewards you for actually breaking, saving you at least a turn of build-up before your next discharge. This deserves the top spot in S tier. It does many things, it does them well, and most surprisingly, it actually deals good damage on top of the other upsides. It even deals good break damage with its 100% break efficiency, which is the golden number in the brackets, by the way. And the tooltips you're seeing here are based on the PC mod called Enhanced Descriptions, in case you were wondering. Anyway, that concludes the list. Gustave starts off strong, but then quickly falls off because he doesn't get anything exciting compared to other characters until you get Strike Storms or Shatter, and then finally unlock the rest of his skill tree. If you haven't yet, just take it slow, enjoy the game, and once you did the thing, make sure to check back. I'll have the late game portion ready by then. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like, subscribe if you want to see more, and let me know in the comments what kind of content you would like to see next. And please avoid spoilers for those who come after.